Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other 2 books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online booksellers everywhere today. I was watching videos by Mad Black 80 and Professor Black Truth about the tragic death of Ashley Gale Paxton. Now, Ashley Gale Paxton was a young 19-year-old black woman who loved Japanese anime, and she loved to present her interpretation of Japanese anime characters in her cosplay that she presented on social media. And as she presented her interpretation of these characters on her social media, this is where a group of racist nerds who are part of toxic fandom looked to verbally attack her in the comment sections of her social media, and this basically destroyed the self-esteem of Ashley Gale Paxton to the point where she wound up taking her own life at 19 years old. Now, this whole situation was one that's really complex to me, and I could not just make one video about it. No, I have basically made 3 videos about it, and this is the 3rd one because there was a lot of components that have to be unpacked as related to the passing of this young woman. In the first video, I talked about how the whole fandom is changing and how it's becoming blacker, and many racists have an issue with fandom becoming blacker. And in the second video, I talked about how many of these racists basically had an issue with Ashley Gale Paxton because she was representing herself as a character in Japanese anime and saying that a black person was equal to a white person and making herself front and center, and that basically violated the unwritten social rules that these white supremacists in fandom have as related to these corporate-owned characters. Now, what I want to talk about in this video is something that Professor Black Truth talked about in one of the videos regarding the passing of Ashley Gale Paxton as related to black people and the media that we watch. Now, I've been a guy who's been in as related to being a comic fan for over 40 years, and I've been a sci-fi and fantasy fan for over 40 years, and I've also been studying the entertainment industry for over 25 years. And one of the things that Professor Black Truth has said that I can absolutely agree with is that when it comes down to this media that we basically watch, whether it be Japanese anime, whether it be sci-fi or fantasy, a lot of this media is toxic, and basically it's toxic because they have a lot of white supremacist messages inside of the undertones of this media, and a lot of us subconsciously imbibe this media, taking in these white supremacist messages, and these messages basically wind up subconsciously programming us to believe that we are inferior in comparison to other white people. That's something I've learned from years of watching media, and I'll agree with another point Professor Black Truth made, in that black people tend to oversample on this media, and we oversample on this media because we're looking to escape from the doldrums of living life as a foundational black American in America. I know myself, I did this when I was a little boy because I was growing up in a rundown apartment in the South Bronx. And the way I coped with growing up in that rundown apartment on 3430 Park Avenue was to sit in front of the television, sometimes from 8 o'clock in the morning to all the way at 11:30 at night after the honeymooners ended. And I basically, again, as I grew older, would go out here and watch a lot of this different media, thinking it was just entertainment, but not understanding what was going on was that many of these people who are part of the media arm of white supremacy, what they want to do is go out here and participate in mind control. What they want to do is give you a idea in their programming of what they want to see as a black person. That's what they look to do inside of their media, is go out here and present their ideas about black people. And sadly, a lot of black people, we go out here and mindlessly watch this media, not understanding that the white supremacist basically is trying to give you programming so that you can fit into their ideas of what black is and fit yourself into a black box that is acceptable to white people. And this happens in the worlds of comic books, science fiction, and fantasy. A lot of us, as we look to escape, we look to, again, think that we're going to another world or another worldly place, but you're just going to another place where you get the same white supremacy presented to you in between the pages of that comic book or in that fantasy show, and you don't really notice it. Yeah, they'll have a black person in the show, like a Star Trek The Next Generation. Yeah, they'll have a Geordie LaForge or a Worf in the show, but those characters will never be front and center, and that basically is that mind control affecting your mind, where you don't really see how the white supremacist is telling you that you are considered to be in the background of their world. You're considered to be in the background of their world, but you're never allowed to be that person who's front and center. That's all part of the programming in that media that is insidious, and that's just one way that media is insidious, because in other ways they go out here and again program ideas into your head, like I did after reading many comic books. I mean, always the black character is secondary, the black character is in the background, or the black character isn't considered important. Again, this is all affecting your perception of self, affecting how you see yourself, and a lot of us will sit there and not see these insidious ways that this media has an effect on our minds. We don't really see how it has an effect on our minds, and we sit there and think it's just entertainment, but what they're looking to do is enter into your mind and again go out here and program an idea about yourself that has you spellbound, like I talk about in my novel Spellbound, where you're fitting yourself into a black box that is acceptable to these white racists and allow them to have a smooth world where they get to see their version of black. And the thing that upset them about Ashley Gale Paxton was that you had a young black woman who basically was just expressing her interpretation of these characters as related to her love of these characters. She didn't really see color, and that's the thing that triggered these racists, and triggered these racists to the point where they wanted to go out here and attack her on social media, because she basically, again, as I said in the previous videos, violated the unwritten social rule by going out here and thinking that she could put herself in the place of these characters that they deem to be white, that basically, again, are corporate property that came from Japanese anime. That's what makes it completely illogical, but in the eyes of the racists, they want to be seen as front and center like they are in Japanese anime, and they want to program that idea that a black person is supposed to have a place as related to their fandom, and that's where this fandom becomes toxic to foundational black Americans. this fandom becomes toxic to foundational black Americans because this media is again giving you ideas that poison your perception of self, and it poisons your perception of self because again you're seeing yourself one through the lens of this white person's intellectual property. You're seeing yourself not being front and center and being the main character in life, and you're seeing yourself on the periphery of somebody else's world. And all of this is why this media is toxic to black people, not to mention many of the racist messages that are put and racist images that are put in the animes and the mangas and many of the other fantasy and sci-fi shows in the undertones of that material. All of this media in and of itself is extremely toxic to black people because it doesn't present a balanced, humanized image of black people or present an image of black people that shows black people from a position where we basically have power. I mean, I always found it interesting that you would have these movies like Star Wars and these shows like Star Trek, and even though we are in the future, it's all about the white man being up front. No, never about the black man having any sort of power. The only time I saw that was in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and that's where the only show where I saw a black man being in the lead, and that was one of my favorite shows. But when it comes down to the worlds of fantasy and science fiction, this is where a lot of racists basically they just go hog wild because they can go out here and create a world where they can have power as related to what they're presenting on screen, and they can have more power by going out here and controlling the fandom, and creating their own fiefdom, where they make the rules. And sadly, a lot of black people who are out here don't see how they're being led to a place where they are being made into second-class citizens who spend their money on all of this fantasy that basically mirrors the reality that they're currently living in right now. That's what many folks don't see in the black community who are a part of being nerd culture or fandom. They don't see how they're basically, again, buying into the programming of white supremacy. And the saddest part is that they don't see this, and they buy into these narratives thinking, hey, I'm escaping, but you're going back to the same white supremacy because it's made by the same creators. And this is where, again, I gotta agree with Professor Black Truth about us oversampling on this media, and again, its effect on our mind, because it has a deep effect on our minds, and if we don't really become aware of it, we wind up, again, buying into this programming and becoming a part of a toxic fandom that really doesn't want us to be a part of it unless we know our place in their smooth world, which is again at the bottom of the nerd society. They don't want to see black people again in a place where we're out here being front and center. They don't want to see us being again as related to being the lead in their pop culture. That was shown to me as related to incidents like the whole situation when many of the Star Wars fans went berserk when they thought Finn was going to be the main character of the sequel trilogy, and also was shown to me when James Olsen was played by McCard Brooks on the Supergirl show. Many of these fans started showing how racist they were in both of those incidents, not to mention these producers of these shows like Greg Berlanti showed their racism basically every week on shows like Arrow with the way they treated characters like John Diggle. I mean, I remember a couple of episodes with John Diggle basically was told he could be the Green Arrow, and then they basically gave him an N-word moment where Oliver Queen basically said he needed to be the Green Arrow and mistreated his best friend in one of the most cruel ways ever on television. And that's where I started looking at this picture even more critically, because I've always looked at the world of fandom from a very critical eye ever since I was even a teenager. And I was on my mission to again create positive stories about the black experience and go out here and enrich and look to further enrich black culture. And that's where I really see a role for myself in new black media. I see a role for myself in new black media in looking to create a new black media out here that again creates a media that is again allows black people to have our escapism, but not only allows us to have our escapism, but empowers us as well. That's what I'm looking to do with my SJS Direct imprint. Is I'm looking to again walk away from the toxic fandom, look to walk away from the toxic fandom that many black people oversample on, and look to create a space where foundational black Americans can go out here and have our fantasies where we imagine a world where we are front and center, where we are the main characters of our stories, and we are in a world where we are the ones in charge of the narrative and the ones in charge of how the stories are told. And that's where I can further agree with Professor Black Truth as related to a statement that he made in one of his videos that we need to be the ones who are out here creating the media and making the money on that media, because when it comes down to this whole fandom, again, these people go out here and disrespect us. They go out here and do this and then take our money to openly disrespect us, whether it be with the animes, whether it be with these movies, whether it be with the merchandise. They really go out of their way to disrespect us, but the way we empower ourselves is we go out here and we support creators like myself and platforms like the SJS Direct imprint. That's how we empower ourselves, because the only way to, again, deal with these racists is not to be a part of a platform where you're not welcome. No, you have to go out here and create a platform of your own, a platform of your own where you are appreciated, where you are valued, where you are elevated. That's what I'm trying to do as part of new black media, with media like the ISIS series, the Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the Spinsterella books as related to fantasy, and other books I've done like Eternal Night. These are stories where you can get to see black people, one, being the lead character, black people, two, being front and center, stories that are revolving around us, revolving around our culture, and us seeing people who look like us, seeing people who look like us going out here and being the main character in the story, and us having the action and adventure that these white characters have. But we're seeing our culture and we're seeing ourselves in a positive light. That's what I'm trying to do here at the SJS Direct imprint, trying to show you a world of black people, and a world where black people, again, are the ones who are the ones not only making the media, controlling the narrative, and again, making the books. That's what I'm doing here. And I see the impact when people buy my media very different than I see when people pick up the white media. When they pick up one of my books, and I've talked to readers who've picked up my books, they told me their kids' whole perception of self really changes, because I don't have characters who are, black characters who are in the background of a white story or being the looking up to a white person. No, when you read a story when the black person is in the lead and the black person is front and center, it changes your perception of self. It changes your perception of self, where you're starting to see, hey, I'm the one who's front and center. I'm the one who's the lead. And that basically, again, really shapes how a child sees themselves. I mean, the books that I've done, I've talked to many people, and again, they say it transforms their perception of self, because I'm not looking to, again, go out here and make it where, oh, they're part of somebody else's world. No, you're in a world of black people, and you're seeing black people with power, you're seeing a black person with power, you're seeing a black person in control, and that shapes the whole perception of self that's different from mainstream media. And again, that's the difference between new black media and mainstream media, is that new black media is about empowering black people, changing our perception of self so that when we go out here, we see ourselves as valuable, we see ourselves as somebody who is just a good person, and we see ourselves on the same level as a white person. We don't really go out here looking to worship white people, and we follow what happens with what Dr. John Henry Clarke said. I mean, this is something that I put in many of my stories where the white people aren't relevant. They're not even important at all. I mean, Dr. John Henry Clarke, I was reading a quote that he said, we need to get to the point where white people aren't relevant. And that's what I put in my stories here, like John Haynes and Isis and Esteem. The black characters don't even care about the white people. They don't even matter to them whatsoever. And that's a healthy sense of self. A healthy sense of self in that, yeah, racism exists. You know that white supremacy exists out here, but you're not concerned about it because you have a good sense of self. You have a good sense of self that, yeah, that if there's racism out here, you're going to stand up and stand up for being black, and you're going to stand up for what black means, and you're, again, going to fight for what it is. And again, that's what scares many of these racists, when you have a different perception of self. And the only way you can get that perception of self is, again, watching the media you imbibe and being careful about what you imbibe, because the wrong type of media can, again, give you a negative perception of self, like what I've been seeing. I mean, I recently did a book called Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer, and what saddened me was that I saw a lot of black girls who have out here thinking that they're not beautiful, they're not attractive to be models, they're not beautiful at all, and they identified more with a statue of an obese black woman that these racists put out here to say that was the equal to a man, or media that says that a woman like Cynthia Erivo is Man of the Year. That's what saddened me. I was out here looking to promote, again, black beauty as related to the goth subculture, and looking to promote black beauty in general, looking to say, hey, black women are beautiful, and also saying that black women could have the same good time on a vacation that women like Audrey Hepburn did in movies like Roman Holiday. We could have our own stories as related to our experience and our culture. But sadly, when it came down to that book, I was hearing from black women that they didn't believe in themselves due to their low self-esteem, and again identified more with the dysfunction of Tyler Perry, and that showed me the effects of his as related to the toxic media that he produces, that many black women don't see themselves as beautiful. I mean, it's just something that's far flung from the 80s, where I grew up and black women saw themselves as beautiful, where they saw themselves in magazines like Ebony and Jet and saw black beauty elevated. That was something that I grew up with, but sadly this generation of girls didn't grow up with that, and sadly I see the effects of that toxic media on black people, see it all the time, and that's why I had, ever since I was 18 years old, dedicated my life to going out here and creating positive stories about the black experience and black culture, and looking to show you a richer picture of black life, show you a richer picture of black life that isn't the ghetto, isn't the hood, and show you a larger world that, again, shows you a larger picture of life. I mean, when I do stories like Eternal Night, I come from, again, as related to vampires, I was coming to it from as related to black culture and black history, similar to Sinners. When I do things like The Temptation of John Haynes, I was coming, again, talking about our issues as related to racism and intra-racism in a fantasy story. And when I do books like the ISIS series, I want to talk about the history and culture of black people. Again, something that's not really explored in fantasy very well. And when it's done, when it's done by these white media companies, they basically don't really respect our culture, And again, this is why new black media, as I've said before, needs to be more than YouTube videos. We have to go out here and create our own media and our own space so that brothers and sisters can have that place where they can express themselves and feel safe about expressing themselves, have that space where we don't have to be a part of toxic white fandom that never really wanted us to be in their world. No, that's what's got many of these folks upset. What's got them upset is that when they go to these Comic Cons now, these days, it's not like the late 1980s where all you saw was maybe like people like me and my brother, the only two black people in the room. What's upsetting them is that they're seeing a world of black people coming into this space, and they can't have, again, like I said before, their racist fiefdom, where they could feel secure with these characters. No, they're seeing a world that's becoming black, and they're seeing more black people at places like New York Comic Con and Anime NYC. They're seeing black people coming into the space, and that's what's got them all peeved and steamed and looking to, again, attack people like Ashley Gale Paxton. They don't like the fact that black people are coming in, and they're having a good perception of self with saying, hey, I'm going to be the main character. I'm going to see myself as front and center. And to that, I have to say, okay, if you racists don't want us here, then we will go out, we will leave your space, and we're going to take our black dollars with us. That's what we're going to do, is take our black dollars with us. That's where we have the most power. I mean, if black people walked away from fandom, we would take billions of dollars away, because we gave them, again, close to $1 billion back in 2018 for a Black Panther movie in a covert contract, thinking we were going to get more black fantasy movies, black sci-fi movies. I mean, that's what a Hollywood executive who was forward-thinking would have been doing. But no, these racists, they don't value black people. They don't value black people, even though we're seeing that with the success of Sinners, Ryan Coogler's latest film, that this is a direction that fantasy is going in, that we're going in a direction where we're seeing that there is a base of black dollars. They are ready to see some fantasy, some science fiction. No, don't want that black dollar. No, we see that the market is there, but many of these racists don't want that market. So if you don't want that market, this is where I think the next step is, as related to what Professor Black Truth had stated about, us making our own money, and again, us investing in our own platforms. I mean, to me, that's what we need to be doing. Like with my SJ's direct imprint, we need to be investing in our own platforms and having our own platforms for our own fandom, because we don't need to be a part of a toxic fandom that is full of racists and grifters who basically use YouTube to sit there and complain all about these different movies being woke, which is, again, a code word for black. No, we don't need to be a part of their fandom or their characters. No, we can go out here and create fan bases around our own characters. We can go out here and create stories of our own, because they make their own stories, and we don't have to buy into their stories, because their stories aren't about our experience. No, our experience is very different. That's what I have found over the years as I've written fantasies like ISIS Imitation of Life, where I made a commentary about why you didn't see any black superheroes during the Golden Age, because our fight was completely different. We were not out here, again, putting on capes and tights, because we had to deal with Jim Crow, we had to deal with racism, and we had to deal with the supervillain of white supremacy. We had to deal with that menace, and again, that menace had to be handled very differently. I talk about that in ISIS Imitation of Life. And again, I come to defend black people with the fantasy, but I come to you with the realities of black life. And I come to you with the realities of black life because I want you to understand that when it comes down to being black, your experience is very different. It's different, and we need to, again, we can go out here and be heroes, but we're going to be heroes by our own standard. And that's what I believe new black media needs to be about as related to science fiction and fantasy. We're going to do this by our own standard and not look to be, again, accepted by white people, because I'm not looking to be accepted by white people. I've been, a fan of media, of these shows and stuff for over 40 years, but my reasons for coming in was not to gain white acceptance. I was never here for white acceptance. I was always here because, again, 1, I like the characters, 2, I like the stories, 3, I just, again, enjoy watching these type of shows. And the whole thing is that I always wanted to make these type of shows or make this type of media with black people in them front and center. And I always knew that it would have an effect on black people, and especially black children. I've seen this when I go out here and I was selling John Haynes. I mean, guys were out here like, yeah, this guy John Haynes is so cool. And I really like this guy because he looks strong and confident. And that, to me, again, had an impact on me. I mean, seeing how the characters I create impact black children and their perception of self, where they see black first, where they see black front and center, that's where I see, again, black people going. And again, when I think about Ashley Gale Paxton, she was in the right direction, but she just needed support. I mean, this young lady was in the right direction, but she didn't understand the unwritten social rules of white supremacy. But I see things changing as related to black people, and this is where new black media has to come in. New black media, we as related to us, we have to create the media to counter program the anti-black racism that is inside of mainstream media. It's our job to go out here and understand, yeah, this media is mind control as related to their media, but we're going to counter program this media, so that you can have your mind right. That's what our media is all about. That's what I'm about here at SJS Direct, getting your mind right, so that you don't wind up becoming a victim of the insidious white supremacy that is in much of this media which has hypocritical messages that talk about being good, but we look at the fandom and the people really are not, again, bearing the fruit as related to their behavior. Like Jesus talked about, Jesus said you would know them by their fruit. And again, if you're a true fan of stuff like Star Wars or anime or anything like that, again, you're going to have a problem when somebody, again, says a black person's interpretation of a lead character is wrong, or a black person is wrong for cosplaying a character. Again, this is all about interpretation when it comes to their characters, because their characters come from adaptation, and basically the person who bought the rights to that media is giving you their adaptation of that media. So when it comes down to us, it's a different story because we're making our own media. And again, that's the direction we need to go in, creating our own space for ourselves, a space that empowers us. That's where I believe new black media's role is as related to comics, science fiction, and fantasy. Now, that's the direction I want to go in as related to media. This is where I want to go. I want to create that space for foundational black Americans where we're looking at ourselves and seeing ourselves as equal to white people and having the same value as related to ourselves, to the point where we say, I'm worth it. I don't need to be a part of somebody else's culture. No, I can be a part of my own culture. I can have my own characters. I can have my own pop culture, and we're going to have our own pop culture. We don't need to be a part of somebody else's pop culture where we're not wanted. We can go out here and have our own stuff, and our own stuff is going to be about elevating us and empowering us That's what our media should be about, and that's the direction I'm looking to go in as a writer, as a publisher, looking to go in that direction because, again, why should I be a part of a media that is toxic to my mind? Why should I be a part of a media where the fandom doesn't welcome me? These are critical questions that I ask that many black bootlegs don't ask because they go out here and, again, mindlessly sample this media. They mindlessly sample this media and, again, buy into it without ever saying, hey, look at the way they're presenting this black person. And then some of them even make excuses for these people because they want to be liked. But again, being liked is nothing, as I've talked about in books like I've done, like Stop Simping. You got to take your respect. And sometimes the way you take your respect is by taking yourself away from toxic environments. This is how you take your respect. You take yourself away from toxic environments. This is something that I learned to do for over the years, and again, something I did as related to when DC Comics decided they were going to end their universe in 2011. I mean, I no longer have emotional attachment to somebody else's characters or somebody else's intellectual property. No, I'm out here looking to make my own intellectual property and go out here and make my own intellectual property and look to empower black kids and adults, again, giving them messages that will elevate them. And again, looking to do this in the undertones and the overtones of stories that I've done, like Isis All That Glitters, where I made some commentary about the difference between black women and white women in between the lines. And again, this is what they do in their media, and this is what I'm doing in my media to counter-program the racism that many people imbibe and are not aware of as related to this media. Again, it has a major effect on us. And again, the way what we need out here is a way to counter-program that media. And again, that's something I'm trying to do with many of the books I produce on the SJS Direct imprint. Try to go out here, and again, I've seen the effects. I've seen the effects of when you go out here and read good black media. It affects the kids, affects their frame of thinking, affects how they see themselves. I've seen the effects of when you go out here and counter-program this media, kids having a sense of self-esteem, having a sense of self-worth, having a sense of self-confidence. Now, I've run into, again, a lot of resistance, but the whole thing is I still keep pushing on because I understand that we can't stay in a place like a toxic fandom where these and be miserable in the company of people who don't want us, don't want our money. Again, that's just foolish and counterproductive to keep investing in a system that basically doesn't want you. Again, you're showing them, you gave them hundreds of millions of dollars with Black Panther. You made Sinners $100 million box office hit, and they look to sabotage the fantasy genre for black people with A Wrinkle in Time. I mean, this shows me that you don't value black dollars. You want to continue with white supremacy. Well, you can continue with your white supremacy with your media, but all the smart brothers and sisters, I mean, for them, I tell them, here, come over to SJS Direct, be a part of this new black media. That's how we push back. That's how we stand up for ourselves. We walk away from toxic media, and that's the next step many foundational black American comic fans, sci-fi fans, and fantasy fans need to take as related to, again, the whole situation as related to nerd culture and the toxic fandom that's a part of it. Now, if you want to check out my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can check out all my books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find those books at other online booksellers like Draft Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to help me to be able to pay for covers for SJS Direct books, or help me to make the next SJS Direct comic book, or help me to stay on the air, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.